This is a special episode of the Marathon Handbook Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Doyle, and I am joined by my colleague and Poconos correspondent, Alex Cyr. Alex, we're here to break down the Philadelphia Marathon weekend. You ran the half marathon. I ran the marathon. And we thought it would be cool to do a special extra podcast this week where we talk about what makes Philly special, what our experience was like, and just why we're both kind of buzzing from race weekend. So first things first, I'll put you in the hot seat first, and we'll talk about the marathon afterwards. We'll do them in order. So Philadelphia Marathon weekend includes a half marathon, an 8K, and a marathon. And some crazy individuals decided to do all three. You and I only chose one. You went with a mission. Let's start at the start here. Going to Philly, you've never run the race before, right?
No, never.
So what's the half like? You get there. I mean, I forgot how big a race it is.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because that's the funny part about Philly, right? I'd heard of a couple of friends doing the race. It's somewhat well known in elite distance running circles. It's not a marathon major. And so going into it, I was wondering if this would be like one of those races with a solid amount of elite athletes and almost nobody else, or if this would be a mass marathon where I'd have to get out in the start line and make sure that no one tramples me if I don't go out fast enough. And I think it was in the nice, happy middle.
Yeah.
It was a decently deep elite field, and it was a quite big, like modestly big, full field. What did you have about almost 30,000 people competing across the half, the full, and the 8K?
Yeah. It's a huge weekend, right? So the half marathon you ran in had just shy of 12,000 finishers. So 11,956 finishers, which makes for a pretty damn big race. Like I went out onto the course. So it's a Saturday morning start, 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. I went out on the course to try to catch you. You were too fast for me to catch you on two different occasions, but it runs right through the heart of the city.
My content collection team did just okay this time around.
Yeah. No, we got some video of you and some photos of you, but I didn't personally get to see you. I just saw you like your back in the distance drifting off, past City Hall area. But basically the race, it starts in this pretty incredible part of right in the downtown core of Philly, right where all the museums are on Benjamin Franklin Boulevard is the big street's name. And it feels like a big city race. And then you take off and you run through the heart of the city before you go out into the park area. Yeah. What's that like? So you get to the start line, like walk me through race day, walk me through the experience.
Yeah. So I actually couldn't believe there were 12,000 people racing the half because it didn't feel like that morning. So the least glamorous part of the elite field is that you usually have to meet somewhere before going to the start line because there's usually a shuttle service that actually gets you to the spot. You're kind of handled like a bunch of sheep in that field because there's just enough people to keep account of every single person. And so we all meet at the Philadelphia Sheraton, which is the meet hotel at like 5:30 in the morning, and then walk in one straight line to the race start, which is about 1 kilometer away. At this point, it's downpouring. And so the day starts off kind of crummily, and I'm hoping that things get better. We walk towards the start, and there's this big area. The start line is just next to, it's kind of like an Expo type area that stays open all weekend with merch and medical tents and race information, just a bunch of stuff. People hang out there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we get there, and because we're so early, we're kind of the first ones there. We get to warm up around the area. The rain eventually stops. And the feeling, even though we're in a pretty enclosed area, is that, this is not that huge a race. This is kind of a smaller town race in a good way. And then we get to the start line. I turn around and there's like 12,000 people behind me. And so at the moment, I don't really focus on them. I focus on the people who are next to me. And there's someone talking, giving us all the race directions, national anthem happens. And then I just remember one of the hosts, because these races have an announcer, just booming on the microphone saying, and we have one of our ambassadors Saucony professional athlete Jared Ward. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Jared Ward is here. He's, one of the best American distance runners of all time. He's probably up on the stage talking. And then I turn around and he's actually next to me. He's doing the race. Like, oh shit.
Oh, he's
okay.
he's like waving to the crowd and you're like right next to him.
Yeah, they call him the race ambassador, but I realize I have to deal with him in this race, which I don't do. The race itself, very cool. So last January, 2 weeks before the Houston Half Marathon, my coach made me do what he called the impossible workout. 30 minutes at threshold pace, followed by 1 kilometer of kicking, even faster. All of it at half marathon pace, which for me is about 4:56 per mile.
You had to slide that one in there, didn't you, Cyr?
My point is that running on frozen roads near my house in Toronto to do this workout sounded daunting, and going to some gym and running on a regular treadmill sounded even worse. Luckily, Michael had a Wahoo Kicker Run treadmill stashed in his home in northern Toronto, and so I took advantage of that last winter.
So that's why you kept coming over to my house all the time.
I mean, I also came for the company.
Sure.
And mainly for the Kicker Run's run-free mode, where the treadmill uses sensors to adjust its carpet speed so that it can respond to your running speed in real time. So it responds to you, and not the other way around. Now that was helpful for the workout's kick portion, so I could accelerate naturally without having to worry about pressing buttons all the time. The treadmill also comes with the lateral tilt feature, which will simulate the angles of running on a natural terrain. So every step is not the same, which is a good thing. And it's kind of like if you're running outdoors. And bonus, the Kicker Run connects with a laundry list of third-party apps, including Strava, the Wahoo Run app, and Zwift. So you can run free in Watopia.
It's quiet, simple, and effective. The treadmill follows you and not the other way around. It's available in the US, the UK, Germany, and Austria. And now you can get a free Headwind smart fan worth $319 when you order the Kicker Run from Wahoo Fitness using the promo code MHRUN. That's all one word, MHRUN. Take our word for it, as well as the professional athletes that use it, including ultra runner David Roche, triathlete Chelsea Sodero, Olympic gold medalist Cole Hawker.
And now, me.
And for the month of November, use that promo code and you will get 25% off the Kicker Run. That's a massive savings. So go to the link in our description to get your 25% off and the Headwind fan for free. All right, back to the show.
I think, ranked something like 12th, so I get to start pretty close to the front. And then we just bomb it down the city towards Philadelphia City Hall. And as a Canadian, I haven't spent any time in Philly until this weekend.
Right.
We hear of Philly. It has a reputation as a hardworking city that's kind of like the underdog of New York. There's a whole Rocky culture, but you don't really know Philly till you see Philly. It's a very historic town. Obviously, kind of the birthplace of America. I know a few cities in the States would contest that title, but I think Philly owns it. That's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. So a whole lot of landmarks. Ben Franklin is there in Pewter, and we just run down these landmarks. So the first 1 or 2 kilometers is it's sightseeing. You're not tired yet. It's kind of flat, a bit downhill. You're running through these buildings. There are, I suppose, thousands of people lining the course. Hundreds in that area, but totally way over thousands who are cheering, and it's really loud in a good way. And then eventually you get past this concentrated area and you start running on secondary cities. I'm not going to break down turn by turn because my direction skills suck. Check out Strava if you want to see that. But even on the side streets for the first 10 kilometers, the noise doesn't stop. The people are lining up, cheering for you. It was an awesome vibe to the point where I personally split my fastest 10K ever inside of a longer race. And the first whole 10 is super flat. And so my whole internal narrative is stop. You're going to blow up. Stop doing this. You're going to blow up. This is stupid. I'm looking at every single kilometer and my goal is to run 3:04 per kilometer. And instead I'm going about 3:01s. And that doesn't sound like much, but that adds up as the race goes on.
Oh, yeah.
So I hit 10 kilometers feeling like I'm on pace for a personal best, still feeling all right, but waiting for the shoe to drop. And just for that feeling of going beyond my threshold, just start to creep into my muscles. And it doesn't happen right away. We hit the second half of the course, which is a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Not much wind. Weather was perfect, but we hit some hills, kind of like two hilly sections. One a little bit past halfway, I think like between miles 7 and 9. And
Yes.
then you're kind of going up and down. And after that first little bout of up and down hills, then you have a bit of flat before hitting what kind of feels like two peaks, two hills in mile like 9. And I remember looking at the course profile and noting that the last mile, at least, maybe a mile and a half, would be slightly downhill. And so as I'm going up these hills, I'm losing my pace a little bit. I'm bleeding a few seconds, but I'm telling myself that it's going to be a fast finish either way. So we did this thing. So more on this on the YouTube channel later on, but we went to Michael Secret Marathon Handbook Layer to do a prep workout for another half marathon I did, Santa Barbara half marathon, using the Wahoo Kicker Run treadmill that goes up, that you can put an incline and a, I guess, decline on it.
Yeah, you
And I
can
was
decline
thinking
like
of that
3%.
workout,
Oh, were you?
which, yeah, I was, because I was like, you know what? You go up, you lose some seconds, don't worry, you're going to gain it back on the downhill. So it's kind of like letting that play in my mind. And so sure enough, I gained a bit of time going back down. And luckily I had about 12 people ahead of me at the halfway mark, and a few of them really started to bleed in the second half. So I always had someone in my sight who was slowly coming back to me. So I was in no man's land for a big part of the race. It just so happened that there was a group ahead and a group behind, but I always had people to chase. And so I closed fine, I guess.
Oh, you closed really well. You ran a personal best. You're a 104 half marathon guy now, which I imagine you're very happy to say. No
Yes.
longer 105, now 104.
Yeah, I
And
clarify that with the people in my life. They look at me like I've lost my mind, but to me,
they're
it
like,
feels
is that
great.
fast? Yeah. I think it's the same experience in the marathon, and I'll break down the marathon in detail in a minute here. But I think that one of the cool overall takeaways for me from the Philadelphia experience is that I think at any level, from, elite athlete, top American runners and North American runners, people like yourself trying to find an elite field to push and to improve what you're, to kind of have a breakthrough of some kind on a fair, flat course that's just like a really well organized event. And then people like myself who are, dedicated recreational runners, right? Is that you have people to run with. And the problem with a smaller race is you're often all alone for big chunks. And the problem with the World Marathon Major, for example, in the marathoning circuit, is that now with these like 55,000, 60,000 person races, it feels like you're being kind of like shoved into a very tight, narrow running experience for like the entire race, even if you're like a pretty quick runner. So, and certainly if you're in the middle of the pack or the back of the pack. So I think Philly is kind of hitting that happy middle here with like 12,000 finishers in the half and 12,570 finishers in the marathon as well. Cool takeaways for me. And I know this is both in the half and the marathon course, because the half kind of imprints over top of a lot of the marathon course. The marathon course covers a lot of what the half marathon course does, and then it does a bunch more. It does half more, right? So for me, like 5K, okay, first of all, start of the marathon, I think it's really one of the underrated great starting areas, because it's this big wide boulevard. So there's all kinds of room for lots of runners. It's really easy to get into your corral. They've got, A to whatever, all the way back in corrals. Did hear some concerns or criticisms of bag check being a bit of a gong show. I know you had your own issue, but that was like an elite athlete issue, which is, I think, only
not yet sure if this was a race organization issue or an Alex Cyr issue. So I won't
Alex lost
comment
his
on
bag.
that. Yeah, I think Alex lost his bag.
Alex lost his bag and then had to go get his laptop, his MacBook, and walk around with the Find Me app on, trying to find his phone.
There was a time in the weekend where I could not locate my phone, my passport, and most importantly, my Puma Faststar Nitro Elite 3s.
In ascending order of importance. So I think obviously you run through the first 5K, you're running through the heart of the downtown of Philadelphia, and Philadelphia feels, it's kind of like Boston. It feels like a good sized city. It's not overwhelming. It's not New York. It's not London, but it feels like a real sizable American city. And so you're running through, I was genuinely taken by how many people were out at 7:00 in the morning on a Sunday for the marathon, and also for your race, where it started with a bit of rain and drizzle. And so it wasn't the most ideal of mornings for spectating, but there were tons of people on the street cheering. So the Philly locals really buy into this race, which I think is really cool and speaks to, I think, how important this race is for that city. And then 5K in, you run around the city, which is awesome. Then you end up down by the river, by the waterfront, which they have, which I always forget that Philadelphia has a portion that's on the water. It's on the river. So there's an incredible, the Benjamin Franklin Bridge is a spectacular bridge, and you run straight down towards it and then take a hard right as you get down to the water and run along the waterfront for a bit. And for me, it was a crisp, sunny Sunday morning. We had pretty ideal weather, which is one of the other sneaky, amazing things about having a marathon 3 weeks into November, is you're pretty much guaranteed to have nice, cool temperatures on race morning. There's no risk like there is with Berlin this year, or even Chicago in some years, where you can get a warmer day or a really hot day that's like a summer day that basically wrecks your race. Like, the worst case scenario with Philly is you'll get rain, or you'll get it to be very cold and windy, and you got to deal with that, which is a challenge, but not the same thing as a hot day, right? So for us, it was just like perfect temperatures, single digits, no wind, sun, and you're running down, and then you just see this giant glistening bridge crossing over the river. And it was like, it's a really spectacular sight. And I was like, wow, this race kind of feels like a big city race. It feels kind of like, I want to say major marathon, because there's not 55,000 people on the course with me. I was like, but this feels like there's a majesty to this race. There's like a bigness to it that really kind of I'd forgotten about, because I've run this race. This is my 4th time running Philadelphia.
Yeah, I got caught looking around, and I'm pretty dialed in during my races. So I had a friend ask me, like, oh, like maybe you could talk about the things that you see on the course and write a story about it. And I was like, the only thing I see during a half marathon is black. Like, I don't think of anything around me, but I did catch myself a couple times during the race looking around on the bridge. I'm like looking at both sides. All you see is just like water and just a big opening between like these two pieces of land. And it's majestic, honestly. And then there's this helicopter that passes over me, and I'm like, oh boy, kind of took my mind off the lactic for a couple split seconds. But just, yes, it was like, it was cool. You kind of forget that you are in a race. There's a good amount of positive distraction.
Yeah. And then, so for me, the marathon where they add up a lot of the distance in the second half is, and this course has changed over the last few years. So the previous, I had not run it since 2018, and they've changed the course since I last ran it. And you always went out into a park area, but we spent a lot more time in this park area this time around. I know the half marathon course cruised around this park as well, a little bit hillier.
We kind of finished there. Yeah. Like, I think most of mile 12 happens in that park. It's like right before taking that last downhill. It's like a flat park, kind of feels like you're running cross country, except that obviously you're on the paved stretch.
I thought it was quite a beautiful addition. I mean, obviously a little bit quieter than running through the city with the spectators, although I was pleasantly surprised that in sections of the park for the marathon, there were a good number of people who had made the trek into the park to cheer people on, which I was very surprised by. There's not many races that I've done where people go out of their way at 8:30 in the morning to go cheer on random strangers in a park several kilometers or several miles away from perhaps where they live. Right. So I thought that spoke volumes to the running community in Philadelphia, which is pretty neat. And also just kind of a pretty place to run, right? And a little bit of a quiet patch, as long as it's not clearly an afterthought made to make up distance, is totally okay by me. It allows you to kind of settle down and get focused. Um, and then Philly has this really nice component to it where you run along what's called Kelly Drive, which is this long, wide road. It's quite nice, and they just refinished the surface, so the tarmac was really good. And you run all the way out, and there's at 20 miles, there's a turnaround in this community, which has a ton of fan support in this area. It's like a little like enclave, I guess north of the city. And you do a U-turn and you run all the way back on the other side of Kelly Drive. So you get to see all the runners going out as you're coming back as well, which is a really neat thing to experience as a marathon runner. And so it's got this nice kind of elegant 3-act structure to it, if you think about it in terms of like if it were a play or a movie, right? And that, dramatic third act of your marathon run takes place as you take that turn and you got 10K to go to get back home, which I thought psychologically is such a nice and also just an easy way for your brain to kind of wrap yourself around like this big ask, which is like, okay, body, I'm going to drag you through the last 10K to get this thing done. But yeah, so the reason why I wanted to do this kind of special little episode is I started to think to myself, I'm like, okay, I've done a lot of races around the world in the last 15 years or so. And you and I talk a lot about the World Marathon Majors, right? And we do the power ranking of the World Marathon Majors. And we're always discussing, we're always debating like, what's the best race in the world? Is it New York? Is it Boston? Is it London? And then we often find ourselves talking about the best of the rest, talk about Rotterdam. Valencia comes up. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. We've talked about Valencia a lot. Amsterdam comes up. Toronto comes up. And got me thinking about Philly. And it's like Philly is what I would categorize as a runner's race, like a race that I would recommend people do because it kind of checks all these boxes I'm looking for. And also I would call it like not a tier 2 American race, but under the majors. I would categorize it as like an American classic is like kind of maybe a nice way of framing it. So I thought it would be cool if we kind of teased out what we would see like as our American classics list. And I'll throw a few at you. Obviously, Philadelphia Marathon Weekend goes on there. The half and the marathon are both great races. California International Marathon coming up in a couple weeks. I'd say we add that one there too. I'd say CIM is similar to Philly. Really great race, really well organized, a runner's race. Twin Cities Marathon. Going to add that one on too. Grandma's Marathon in Duluth. That's a really unusual one because it happens in June. Not many marathons happen in June. LA maybe?
LA maybe.
Yeah. And what do you have any other off the top of your head here? I mean, obviously there's going to be, and feel free if you're listening or watching the YouTube version of this or on Spotify to add your comments about what you think an American classic distance race is, particularly a marathon. We just listed off a bunch of marathons.
Yeah. Well, I have a few. Indy.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Marathon, half marathon, which happened, I think, 2 weekends ago now? Like early November is usually when it happens. And then one of my personal favorites, Houston. Houston, which is very much a runner's race. The Houston half marathon, I maintain, is in lockstep with Valencia as the strongest half marathon in the world. Last year, I guess this year, because it happens in early January. I also plan to do it next year in 7 weeks. This year, when I did it was so deep that I don't think I cracked the top 60 with a 65-minute half marathon. It's very deep. Same thing as a runner's race. Though I want to throw it to you and ask you what you consider to be an American classic, because I have my own take. Let's say that this is a separate category from the majors because the majors are their own thing.
Yes.
I was thinking about what it is that makes another good American marathon. And I mean, this could apply to marathons around the world. It don't have to be American. We happen to be talking about American marathons. Um, it's that feeling to me that every runner in the field thinks they can have their best day there.
Oh,
And by
good
that,
one.
I
Yeah.
mean, right? Like, what I mean is it's elite friendly. Okay. There is prize money. There is a huge regard for performance. There are mile markers. The course is accurate. It's legit. Like it's a legit course where you will have a few, if not many, professional athletes doing it because then you know that the race is elevated enough to not have runners go the wrong way, to not have a car find itself on the course. Unfortunately, this stuff happens and
Yeah.
it sucks, not only for elite runners, but even for people like me or show me someone who gets cut off during a marathon, doesn't matter their speed, they will be pissed. And
Yes.
so this applies to the elite people, but not just the elite people. This is for the entire field. A 3 hour marathoner, a 4 hour marathoner, a 5 hour marathoner needs to feel like they can run their best time. And for that to happen, you can't be totally encumbered on the course by a bunch of bodies. Also, probably not great for you to be waiting 2 or 3 hours at the start. The
Yeah.
corrals need to be moving quickly. And listen, I have my own experience. I'm only one guy, but after talking to a few people who did Philly, I was staying at one of the hotels really close to the start line, and I chatted people up in the elevator because I was there on my own. So I was chatting with people, and I talked to people of a bunch of different speeds, and they all kind of said the same thing. Oh, the organization was great. And when someone who runs a 5 hour marathon and then someone who runs a 2:10 say the same thing, that's a good sign.
It's a great sign. Yeah, I think that's great criteria. I would roll. Yeah, my criteria for a great American marathon would be, as you just said, it is extremely well organized. Like it's of the grade or caliber of a world marathon major in terms of like the logistics are ironed out. Like I think about, the corral assignments, the structure of the start, the fact that the course is really clearly delineated and there's no chance you're going to get sent in a wrong direction or you're going to find yourself like confused at 20 miles as to whether you're going to go right or straight, like, and that does happen in smaller races more often than I think we'd like to to admit, right? That organizing a 26-mile race in particular is really challenging. And so they've got all these logistics ironed out as well as it feels like there's all of these little extras sprinkled in. Like for example, this year you mentioned Jared Ward, they brought Dakota Popan as well. Lauren Fleshman was there. And then the other, members of like the, Bart Yasso was there, right? Hanging out at the Expo all weekend. It's not an American marathon unless Bart Yasso is like, answering questions about the Yasso 800s at the Expo, right? So it had all of that. It had those qualities. And also it's just got a lot of depth to it. So like you said, if you're a aspiring American elite and you're out of college and you're trying to make the US Olympic trials and you're trying to find a fast course with somebody that you're going to be able to compete with to get the best out of yourself on the day. Or if you're trying to run a Boston qualifying time and you want to make sure that you're not in no man's land in the last 10 kilometers of the race where you've got no one to run with. I mean, that's a nightmare, right? Or if you're trying to crack 4 hours in the marathon and you want to feel like you've got a community of people around you, or 5 hours in the marathon and you want to feel like you've got this group of people around you to like help bring you home, right? Is you've got that incredible depth to a field and everyone has someone to run with. But that it's not overwhelming either. And I think this is the big problem I'm starting to have with world marathon majors is that they're becoming overwhelming and it's almost becoming a bad experience for some people in certain circumstances, right? So I would say that it has to have that. And I would say also the city needs to feel like it embraces what's happening and it needs to feel like it's a special weekend. which you definitely felt that in Philadelphia. I think
Yes.
cities like Philadelphia, Boston is obviously kind of like the sort of version of this, where it's like the city's the perfect size for the race and they're kind of inextricable. I think Philadelphia is that size where a marathon weekend like this, with nearly 30,000 people attending the events over the weekend, it's an important event for the city, right?
Mhm.
And they had no problems closing the main guts of the city down for both Saturday morning and Sunday morning to host their big events. So
Which, by the way, is also a fun feature of a marathon weekend because usually the two bigger races, because I do know that some of the majors and other big races will have like a 5K the day before, like this happens in Boston, and then they have the marathon. But to have
yeah,
the half and the eight in one day and then the marathon the next day made for a fun, like 2 day or even 3 or 4 day experience where people were kind of more compelled to stay and explore Philadelphia a little bit. Also great for traveling with buddies, whether that's training partners or couples. Like I met a
yeah,
couple in my hotel, once again, in the elevator. He was doing the half, she was doing the full. And
yeah,
so on each day, they had a spectator and a cheer squad for the other, which was cool, which, to tangent a little bit more, also a super spectator friendly course. I don't know what
yeah.
happened to you during my half marathon. Like you don't really have much of an excuse, but during your
You're too
full,
quick.
I,
That's my
I
excuse.
figured it. And also it was just a half. So less so for the half, I suppose, but for the full is awesome to watch as a spectator. I had this plan that I actually executed, which surprised me a lot because again, I suck at directions, but I got it right. See the start, do your run, hour run, run until your partner, your buddies get to mile 9, be at mile 9 45 minutes later.
Yeah,
Watch them pass at mile 9. Stick around. Watch them at mile 12. Then, at this point, you're elevated. You're near that bridge. Then take the exit from that road and then go down under the overpass. Catch your friend again at mile 15. Keep running along Kelly Drive. Stick around. See them at mile 23, 24, 25. At this point, they don't need you because mile 23, 26 is a party. But if you're there, you see everything go down. And also, you get to catch the elite race as well if you show up early enough. So, spectator wise, really cool.
yeah. I think so. I'm gonna write a piece for our site that's basically everything you need to know about the Philadelphia Marathon race weekend for next year. Just because I've run the race a bunch of times, I have obviously I really enjoy the event. I think it's a really high caliber event, and I think it's really worthwhile to have these kind of guides because it allows you as a runner, if like it's these are things that both you and I would like to know when we're going into a race. Like we're doing a recon on a race, we're trying to figure out like what's the course really like, what's the strategy behind it, how do I figure my way around race weekend? Where should I stay? Where should like you said, where should my loved one go? Where should my friend go on course to see me the most number of times? And like Philly's a great race, as you said, for that because you can kind of ping pong around and catch people, especially in the marathon, a few times, right? So I think I'm going to pick your brain about that because you obviously have now firsthand knowledge of what it's like to track runners on the marathon course on race weekend. And I'll put that together, and I think we'll put it on the site in the next week or so, and it will live there forever and get updated each year as things change and progress. I think one thing that I found, minor criticism here, constructive criticism, but I also kind of found endearing is was the race expo itself. I didn't spend a ton of time in the race expo because we were, I was there for the marathon. I didn't want to be on my feet too long. But I did wander around the expo on Friday evening when I arrived in town. What I liked about the expo is it wasn't overwhelming. So it wasn't gigantic. It's in the
Mhm.
convention center, which is located right in the heart of the city, not too far from the start finish, right where all the hotels are, which is great. I like that it was open till 9 p.m. on Friday. So that means that if you're traveling in town on Friday night to run the race for the weekend, you can reasonably probably get there to pick up your bib on Friday night if you want to do it. I like that they did. I don't know. I've never seen this before in a race. They were getting you to schedule in the app. Phenomenal, really good app for a mid-size American race, by the way. Lots of great tracking features. And in this case, you could schedule in when you went to pick your race kit up. So they were kind of trying to create so there wasn't like huge lineups for you to pick up your bib. But the expo also kind of felt like an expo of yore. It felt like kind of an old school expo in like all the great and kind of not so great ways. Like there's like lots of trinkets and trash and like the discount resellers selling the old, the Frank Shorter running company split shorts from like 20 years ago and that sort of thing. I mean, like it has its utility, right? And there is all the stuff you could demo and whatever. It just didn't feel like it's not been evolved the way that we've seen World Marathon Majors expos evolve in since the pandemic, where like everything has changed and like basically they've been gutted and completely revamped.
What, you mean there wasn't a brand new Volvo being displayed at the Philadelphia Marathon Expo?
No. Yeah. So yeah, I have mixed feelings about that because on the one hand, like I felt like a weird nostalgic, it's like comfort food going to this expo because it was like kind of corny and not overwhelming and not sort of because we've seen the tale of the sort of the shift in the expo approach at the World Marathon Majors and covering the majors in the last couple of years. Like on the one hand, you get the experience like Boston, where it's like the expo's been gutted and like there's basically no expo anymore. And it's all happening on Newbury Street with like pop-ups and all these activations. And then you get the flip of that, which is like New York, which still felt like a very big expo. Totally. But it had evolved into this bigger kind of like, it almost feels like a mall. Right. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. I don't know. It's probably a money thing. The like Houston Marathon is kind of the same. Like many of the booths are just like cheap gloves and arm warmers that you can buy for race day, which I'm not complaining because last year I did buy some arm warmers for Houston that decided to be a freezing day on that Sunday. Are we in criticism corner? Want to hear my?
We're still there. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm actually stealing this one from you, so it doesn't necessarily come from me, but I totally agreed. So after the race, I did this thing that I always do, which is I creep the people on Strava who are also tagged in my run because I'm like, oh, who are these guys? How do they train? And I noticed one common thread across all of our runs. The race distance was anywhere between 200 to 400 meters long on our Strava, which I don't think could be attributed to Philly mismeasuring the course. Like, that's one of the first things that a race does, make sure that it's 21.1K. So I'm not saying that's what happened. That's not what happened. What happened, though, I think, was that this course has a lot of turns.
Yes.
And if you don't take the turns perfectly, you run longer than the distance, right? You're not taking the tangents. And it's hard to always know what the tangents are because oftentimes you're running on a straight road and you can't quite tell if the people ahead of you are turning left or right, especially if you're near the front. And so you kind of guess. So and you said this, I was like, you know what? It's totally right. Some performance driven races, a lot of like micro race. I'm thinking of the McCurdy's micro race series, which happens in a park just outside of New York City. They like draw a line. And I think the majors do this too.
The World Marathon Majors paint a blue line where they like literally where the course is measured they paint a blue line down.
I think the race would have benefited from that because you have, at least in our tent, like a group of guys who are gunning for a time. And so if they end up running 200 meters extra because they didn't quite get the tangent right, well, that'll cost you, 30 seconds to a minute. And that can be pretty significant.
Yeah. Here's a wild vision. It's like to extend this idea of like an American classics marathon series, right? Like if this disparate group of good quality American events banded together and created like a league or some sort of consortium to bring up their collective profiles. Like they could paint like red, white, and blue line, a trio of like the red, white, and blue down the street on the course, and it's like marked forever on their streets in Philadelphia and CIM and these other
Oh,
places
I see.
around the US. And like that's their marathon course, and it's like
Hmm.
the mimicking the red, white, and blue, of course, of the American flag. And you follow that line, and you'll run the perfect 26.2 miles. I had the same issue, and I don't blame the race. I don't blame anyone but myself, really, just like trying to get those tangents. There's some wide boulevards and there's a lot of road to cover, and you're just trying to like figure it out in your head as you're running it. You're like, okay, like what's, the old saying of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? And it's like, okay, what's the straight line here, right? It would be cool if they marked the course. Of course, that's like a big ask because they would have to shut the roads down and remeasure the course and paint it all down. But I don't know.
But I think it's a very fair ask. I got to talk to the race director, who's
Yeah,
a gentleman who, there might already be some type of consolidation of some races, or at the very least,
a
this man's
conversation. Yeah.
yeah, well, this man's company kind of presides over the elite sections of a few
Oh,
different
the elite
big American
coordinator. Yeah, because
races.
the race director
Yeah,
is a woman. I'm just
sorry, the elite coordinator, not the race director. Jim Estes is his name, and he takes care of Houston and also Philadelphia, him and his company. And talking to him, it's clear that one of his big goals is to have someone run fast. Like his claim to fame on that day was that he said most races where he coordinates the elite field, a record is broken, and that's kind of something that he can hang his hat on. You want to encourage fast performances, and so I actually think that would be you'd get your return on investment. And that's the thing that I think Philly is trying to keep, because it has this type of reputation as a fast American marathon. Again, you're the one who said this, and I agree. It's a fair marathon. It's not the
yeah.
fastest in the States. It's
No.
certainly not a slow marathon. It's quite flat, especially compared to other more like challenge type of races that have a bunch of
Yeah.
hills. Like I
But
did the
there's a
Santa
couple of good
Barbara.
hills. There's a couple
There's a
of good
couple good
hills at the
hills.
marathon, for sure. Yeah, there's
Hmm.
one in particular close to the zoo in Philadelphia that has always been in the course. It's a few hundred meters. It's a good climb. And they've had to kind of embrace it as being as you said, a fair course instead of a fast course because of these alterations they've made to the marathon course in the last few years. But I would say that they're nice qualities. And yeah, so I should say that the race director is Kathleen Titus, who's quite a personality, and she told the Philadelphia Inquirer that like she called the race deceptively challenging, and that Philly will eat you alive if you're not careful and if you don't respect these hills, which I agree with. If you're not ready for it and you didn't do your homework and you go way too hard and you run those hills too hard, you're going to get smashed in the last 15K or so of this race. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And I should also note, Alex, that I'm just looking at some of the stats here. 17,000 people registered. They sold out. The race sold out months ago. 17,000 people registered to the marathon. So the attrition rate was about a third, which is kind of on par for most marathons.
Wow.
You only see dropout rates, really low dropout rates in the World Marathon Majors. So the only races that get like a less than 10% dropout rate. So you saw like no shows did not start and did not finish. It was about 4,500 people, 3,500 people, not doing the math right here. And they had a 3,000 person wait list to run the marathon this year, which is crazy. So
Wow.
demand is high for this race. Anyway, closing thoughts on this one. Would you recommend I would say it's safe to say you would recommend the half to anyone who wants to run the race from elite runners all the way down?
Completely. Yeah. Oftentimes it's time of year. I think that influences people.
Yes.
They know they want, for example, you want to do a fall half, and every year is, if you're not strictly gunning for the majors all the time, every year is different. And you might enter the fall feeling really fit and want to do like a late September, early October race, in which case Philly's not it. I think it's the perfect race for those, especially on this side of the world. If you don't want to travel that far and you want to do something close to home, don't want to worry about the time change. But honestly, anybody who is on the other side of things and they might be entering the fall a little bit behind their usual schedule of nailing a race
Yes.
in October. And instead they want to give themselves September, October to train and then round into fitness by mid to late November. Then you fall into a place where there aren't that many marathons left. And Philly is like the saving grace. I ended up being that guy this year. And for me, it was either do Philadelphia or wait until Houston, 2026. And so
Yeah.
I'm really happy that it was on the calendar. So someone in this situation or someone who wants a good, challenging, fast race in a nice American city, totally recommend.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking for a big city experience and a big marathon experience, uh, but you're unable to get into the World Marathon Majors, or they're too damned expensive, or you find them too overwhelming, because they are indeed overwhelming in a lot of ways, and the logistics are super challenging. Like, think of it this way. For me, I stayed right downtown by City Hall. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't devastatingly expensive like New York is, or even Boston is. Boston's crazy expensive for marathon weekend. The prices just skyrocket. So I was able to stay at a decent hotel, very close, like 1 mile from the start. Walked over to the start, woke up, walked over to the start. It's a 7 a.m. start, walked over at like 6:15, did a bunch of lag swings outside of the corral with no stress about having to get into the corral. Waited in a lineup for a porta potty, had no issues there. And then I walked right into my corral, chucked my throwaways, and was ready to run the race, and off we went. And then at the finish line, they had a shuttle bus service that took me that 1 mile back to my hotel, or I could have just walked if it was a little bit of a warmer day. And so logistics were just absolutely perfect. So yeah, like, I think if you want a big city race, but you don't want to be overwhelmed by the experience, it's not going to like completely break the bank for you. And you have people to run with, and the course is great. The spectatorship is significant. And there's all kinds of neat stuff to do in Philadelphia before and afterwards, which I also enjoy. I mean, we could like nerd out about like the museums, of which there are many, the American history stuff, of which,
Well,
I mean, Philly's
wait.
steeped in that.
Can we play the 1 minute game of overrated, underrated? Because I have a
Sure.
few entries.
Let's do it.
Overrated, the Philly cheesesteak.
Agreed.
Underrated, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's massive. I was in Vienna this summer, and many of the museums there are not much bigger or bigger at all than this museum. Vienna being a city known worldwide for its art. That was a massive building. I ended up spending like 2 hours in there and still didn't see everything.
There
Underrated.
are there are three excellent art museums in Philadelphia that are all within, they're all right by the start finish area. There is the Philadelphia Museum of Fine Arts, I believe it's called. And there's also the Barnes Museum, which has a massive private collection of some of the most important artworks ever. Like kind of a shocking amount of like Gauguin and tons of Matisse, Picasso, and so lots of modernist art, and like really quite overwhelming and a beautiful building. And then there's a new Calder, so Calder the sculptor, who is who's from Philadelphia. So there is a Calder Garden and Museum that was just opened this fall. Stunning building, incredible experience. I went there the day before the race actually to kind of like shut down and kind of like just tune out the fact that I was running a marathon the next day. I went and hung out in this beautiful space for a couple of hours. It's incredible. So like there are really high level world-class art museums. There's a science museum. There's just, and then, okay, sorry, go continue with your, with your underrated, overrated. I just went on a tangent there. You triggered me with art museums.
But art scene in Philly, totally underrated.
Yeah.
Taking a picture with the Rocky statue Overrated. Too many people do it.
Underrated.
Overrated. I saw there was a lineup of hundreds of people waiting to take their picture with that statue. It's
Which
overdone.
one? Which
The
one? There's
one,
two.
yes, I
There's
know.
one at
The
the
one
bottom of the steps now, and there's also one at the top of the
at the
steps.
top. The one I saw was the bottom and fair at the top of the steps. The line was a little bit shorter, probably because it was after a marathon and people didn't want to go that high.
I'm referring to the top of the steps. I went up there, and so they didn't have a statue there for a number of years. And of course, if you've seen Rocky, famously, he runs up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Fine Arts. He runs up those steps. Then at the end of the steps, he's sort of like he's visualizing his success or his experience of like psyching himself up to take on was it Apollo Creed, and he's got his arms raised in the air at the very end, and they put that statue in bronze up at the top in the last few years. I think it's kind of a neat touch. I mean, it's kind of insane because it's a fictional character, and it's totally weird that it's like a huge part of like Philadelphia lore and history and culture now. But it's a big movie.
I had a moment when I saw all these people lined up where I started to second guess myself. I was like, wait,
was Rocky
a
real?
real person? Is this based on a true story? Like, what's the deal? So maybe we can agree that the bottom statue is overrated and the top statue is underrated. I'll give you that.
There you go. We'll split the difference. Yeah. I was surprised that I was like thinking that was kind of neat, but I did actually. I was like, oh, it's kind of cool that they put this up here. It's kind of crazy, but kind of cool. It's very Philadelphia in a way.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any more?
Movie. Last one. Reading Terminal. Reading Market.
Oh,
Reading Market Terminal. There we go.
I would say underrated.
Yes, sorry, very underrated. Super cool. In Toronto, we have a kind of a counterpart in the St. Lawrence Market.
Yeah.
It's just this massive building where in Philadelphia's case, it's the Amish communities that mostly sell just like meats, cuts of fish, cuts of meat, fresh vegetables. There are a few restaurants operating inside of this market. Like it's mostly like meats as far as the eye could see, and then desserts, sweet treats, delicacies, obviously cheesesteaks. I got a nice plate of fish there. I had some after the race. I had some ribs. The day after the race, I just could not stop eating. I think I had 5 meals, and I went there and I ordered ribs and an acai bowl. And I think I was the only person in that packed market to order those two things at the same time.
Yeah, that's a weird combo.
Really nice and just cool. It's an experience. You need to go there, show up hungry, and hit up a couple of the vendor joints. It's really cool.
Yeah, this is why I think kind of Philly Marathon Weekend is a special weekend because it's a neat city. There's a lot to do in the city. There is something for everyone. There's a good amount of culture going on. There's excellent restaurants, and yeah, it's just a fun spot to be. And I will say this, I will circle back to your first, underrated, overrated with the Philly cheesesteak. I'm not a fan of stunt eating and I'm not a fan of stunt food. I'm not a huge Chicago style pizza guy. You know, I enjoy, but I do enjoy the idea that a city has a cultural identity tied to food. And I actually think it's kind of a cool thing that Philly has got the cheesesteak. I think it's neat that like there's a debate between the Montreal style bagel and the New York style bagel. I think that the whole pizza thing is interesting as well. So I think that it speaks volumes of a city when the city has a food as part of its identity. And so I'm okay with the Philly cheesesteak existing. It's not my jam. It's not what I was going for after the marathon. But I instead drank at one of the, thanks to you, or actually thanks to our partner and pal Ross, is because he located one of the oldest bars in America that's been continuously running for us to go have a beer in, which was great. But I like the idea that a city has that as part of its identity. And there's like these weird debates about what the best place is to go to get a Philly cheesesteak. There's like 2 places at the city, of course, that people like war over, which, whatever. Anyway, I think it's cool. Philadelphia, amazing race. like gets the highest marks from me. I feel like it delivered yet again. And actually, like, you know what, man, it reinvigorated my love of the marathon. Like you know how I feel about the marathon, and it reminded me why the distance is so special and why events like this are so magical in a person's life. So obviously highest marks for me. So, all right.
Well, that's what we want out of a race. This sets you up well for 2026.
That's right. That's right. Okay. We've talked for almost the length it took you to run the half marathon in Philadelphia about Philadelphia race weekend. We'll cap it at that. So we're going to do a regularly scheduled episode of the pod. It's going to drop on Thursday at around 5-ish in the morning as Eastern time, as it always does. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter to get a notification that when it comes out. We do newsletter every day of the week. Mr. Cyr, we've got all kinds of fun stuff. We just did an amazing first episode of a series that we've just launched called Runs Like Hell. Just give us the elevator pitch, the one sentence.
I interview a notable guest and on the run where the pace gets faster as the questions get harder.
Episode 1 features comedian Laura Green. It is super good. It's on our YouTube channel right now. And we're going to record. We're going to San Antonio, Texas for something called the running event next week, where we're going to basically see into the future and see all of the upcoming shoes for 2026 and other gear. And we're going to record, I think, at least 2 episodes of Runs Like Hell when we're in San Antonio. So that's going to be awesome. There's going to be a trove of content on our YouTube channel and our Instagram and our site and a live podcast from San Antonio as well next week. So make sure you subscribe to all of our channels to get all of that. All right, Mr. Cyr, enjoy your rest day in the Pocono Mountains, and we'll talk to you in a couple of days.
Yeah, let me find a cashmere to tie around my torso, try to fit in. And if I make it out of there, I'll see you in a few days.
Okay.